Well, the debt is a huge problem. It doesn't help capitalism. It interferes with capitalism because what happens is the government is taking resources away from the private sector and diverting them to public spending. And this undermines capitalism. It undermines savings and investment and all the things that we need to grow our standard of living. The problem is much of this debt now is being monetized by the central bank. The Federal Reserve prints money to buy up all this debt. And all that is levying a massive inflation tax on the economy. And this is only getting started. Prices are going to explode in the United States for all manner of consumer goods, especially goods relative to services, because the American economy, after years and years of deficits crowding out private investment, we are completely dependent on the productive capacity of the rest of the world. We are running record trade deficits. Just yesterday, we printed the largest monthly trade deficit in U.S. history, better than $73 billion. Those deficits are going to keep getting higher and higher. And eventually, and I think relatively soon, the value of our money, the dollar, is going to collapse. And all the prices of the imported goods are going to be going up much faster than they are right now. Well, first of all, the debt continues in good times as well as bad. We never have any surpluses when times are good to pay off the deficits we incur when times are bad. But I want to correct a couple of mistakes that you made earlier on with the debt. First of all, the debt to GDP, it's actually 125%, not 105%, because the 105% doesn't count the debt held by the Social Security Trust Fund. So when you count all the debt that's outstanding, it's 125. But that doesn't even tell the whole picture, because you have to look at the state government debt and all the municipalities, because everybody is looking at the same tax base to repay the debt. So when you measure all government debt in the United States, you're looking at 140%, 445% of GDP, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, because it doesn't count any of the unfunded liabilities of the United States government. Those are commitments to pay things like Social Security or Medicare benefits or guaranteed student loans. And when you add all that together, you're talking about several hundred times the GDP of how much we've run up in debt. And the problem, contrary to what everybody is talking about, the problem isn't the debt ceiling. The problem is the debt. The problem is we keep raising the ceiling, so we keep on piling on more debt.
And Professor Wolf, I know we have pretty much this same conversation with you quite regularly about trade and what Peter's talking about. What do you make of Peter's comments there?
Well, I'm always mystified by Peter's comments, because if this is against capitalism, he does have a problem of explaining it. Is everybody wrong except him? Is everybody making a terrible mistake? Is the system self-destructing?
Most people, yes.
I don't think so. I think this is a system that's got basic problems and is trying to solve them by printing a great deal of money and exploding its debt. It's really solving one set of problems by this debt creation, by this monetization, and then it creates a new set. And it has bumbled through for 2 or 3 centuries doing this over and over again. And everybody kind of knows that eventually you're going to solve one problem by creating another one, and then you won't be able to solve it, and then this system will come down. That's the problem.
Well, American capitalism did great until the U.S. government corrupted it. We had a vibrant free market economy under a gold standard when we had honest money, when we didn't have a federal income tax or Social Security tax. We didn't have any of these types of spending programs that we have today. And we had a thriving middle class. We had an economy that really was the envy of the world. We built a standard of living that was unmatched anywhere else in the world. The problems really started when government started to grow and started to impose more regulations and more subsidies and more government spending, and the Federal Reserve came around. So these problems were not created by capitalism. They were created by government's interference with capitalism. And every time government tries to solve the problems that they create, they make those problems even worse.
Well, Steve, I want to give you a chance to weigh in on this. I know we've talked a lot about the different systems, but do you see the United States as having a free economy, especially when it's Congress that is deciding to continue to add on to the national debt, which they say that we own, but the American people don't really seem to have much of a choice in the matter?
Well, The American people have a choice. They can do what happened during the 1920s. And let's go back. I think Peter would admit that's before government debt got to be particularly large. At that stage, government spending was about 5% of GDP or less. And Calvin Coolidge decided to run a surplus for his entire term. And during the 1920s, he did precisely that. He ran a surplus of roughly 1% of GDP every year. And of course, the economy boomed, and he took credit for it and said that the surplus was the reason the economy boomed. When you look at the data carefully, what you find is, yes, there was a government surplus of 1% of GDP every year, and every year the private sector was borrowing roughly 5% of GDP to speculate on the stock market. Now, that's what gave it the turbocharged economy, not the surplus, but the government, but the deficit being run by the private sector. To borrow and gamble, let me finish, Peter, to borrow and gamble on the stock market. And over that period of time, the private debt level rose, more margin debt, okay, just debt to gamble on shares, rose from 1% of GDP to 13% of GDP, and then crashed right back down again. That's what gave us the Great Depression. Now, that sort of irresponsibility on the private debt side is the real Achilles heel of capitalism, and worrying about the government's behaviour is, frankly, identifying the wrong problem.
And Peter, I'm going to give you the final word. You have 30 seconds before we go to break here.
Yeah, the problem was the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, and it was their easy money policies in the latter part of the 1920s that inflated that stock market bubble. And when it popped, what created the Depression was the interventionist policies of Herbert Hoover and then Franklin Delano Roosevelt. That's why we had a depression, was because we had too much government and we had a central bank. If we didn't have either, then we wouldn't have had a depression at all.
All right, I know we've got a lot to talk about. And we wouldn't have had the stock market bubble.
You can shake your head, but that's the fact.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. Fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much, much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really, really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.